Are you curious about the difference between sales tax in the US, GST, their sales tax thing they've got going on in Canada, and VAT, value added tax in UK/Europe? Well, I'm going to share with you a little bit I've learned if you're selling at international marketplaces with Amazon to hopefully help you as you're doing a little research on this information. Now, my disclaimer here is I am not a tax professional, so please do not take any of this as tax guidance or advice. This is more just some basic information to kind of at least get you thinking and think about some things as you're doing your own research and talking to a qualified tax professional about your own individual tax situation. So let's get right into it. So sales tax in the US, you're probably used to it. Let's assume you're selling in the US. You're probably used to it's at the statewide level. So you got to go to the states that have sales tax. I believe there's 44, 42, 46, somewhere around there states. The vast majority of states, I will say very confidently, have a state sales tax. And oftentimes those sales taxes also can vary depending on the county. Like in Texas, it's not just the state, it's not just the county, it's not just the city, but sometimes they have these economic development areas, for school districts or bus services or whatever the case is. There's other factors involved, so it can be pretty complex. So you definitely, especially in Texas, I find you got to have a software tool. Now, in addition to selling or to having a statewide sales tax in the US, if you move up north to Canada, they have mostly federal. I put mostly federal here because there are 4 provinces where you might have to register, but most of what you have to do is definitely going to be the GST, HST, which is in the basically registering through the federal government, what they call the Canadian Revenue Agency. If you do have to file with the provinces, you just go to the individual provinces and register with them. And then in the UK, if you get VAT, you're going to register with their federal government. Maybe that's not even the right terminology, but it's HMRC. HMRC is Her Majesty's Royal Customs. Basically, it's like their version of the IRS or their version of the CRA, probably even a better analogy, because it's like where they do their federal income taxes as well as where they do their federal sales tax, so to speak. Now, how does this all get calculated? Now, in the US, depending on where the person lives, won't quite say it's always that way, but generally speaking, where the person lives, it's going to be added on to the sales price. And that's customary in the US, is that sales tax is going to be added on to the sales price. So if something's $10 and sales tax is 8%, they're going to pay $10.80. If they're in Canada and it's 10 Canadian dollars that they're paying, and it's say 8% is in there where they live, similar type situation, it's also going to be added onto the sales price. So that $10 is now going to be $10.80. And in the UK, in Europe, it's a little different because it's generally going to be included in the selling price. Now in the UK, as I record this, it's 20% VAT, but you're gonna have to go back to do a little bit of algebra. It's not that complex when you get going. There's software and accountants that can help you with all this. But your selling price is basically the selling price plus the value added tax. That's what you're displaying to the customer. So whatever you're displaying to the customer. So if you're displaying $12 to the customer, $2 of that is VAT, and $10 is really your selling price, theoretically. Because the way they look at it is it's 20% of what the selling price is before you factor in the VAT. It's a little bit of minutia there, but basically the easiest way to think of it is if you're in the UK, 1/6 of whatever you're displaying the price as, not your inclusive of VAT, we'll call it, you divide by 6, that's your VAT. So you take away your VAT, and now that's exclusive of VAT. So meaning it's excluding the VAT number. So if that doesn't make 100% sense, don't worry too much about it. Again, there's ways of people who can help you with this one, because there's a decent amount of sales to be made in these other marketplaces. If you're thinking about doing it, I wouldn't let figuring out VAT get in your way, because you're saying I don't like more sales. So if your product sells in the US, there's a good chance it will sell in Canada and or the UK. Now let's talk a little bit about, where does this money come from? How does it get charged? So in the US and Canada, if you put in your registration number, so in the US, for whatever states you put in your registration number for, or in Canada, if you put in your federal registration number, or if you're in any of the 4 provinces that have a provincial sales tax, if you're registered in those provinces, they're going to collect whatever the applicable tax is. They're going to charge the customer, collect it, and then give it to you. So then you're basically filing it to whoever that tax authority is, whether the federal government or a province, or whether it's one of the states in the US. So that's how you end up getting the money for the sales tax to pay. Now, in the UK, Amazon collects it, kind of. Even if you put in no registration numbers or anything, technically, if you're holding inventory in the UK or making sales, and I'm grossly simplifying this, just assume you have to pay 1/6 of that in taxes. Now, one of the nice things is in Canada and in the UK, generally speaking, as long as you've got all your registrations done properly, you can take whatever you pay at the border, because sometimes you're going to pay at the border for their GST and their VAT based on the value of your products. You're going to get a lot of that back when you go to file. So that's the nice thing, is these 2 countries have input credits, whereas the US, generally speaking, you don't get any input credits. But you may be saying, okay, now they've collected this money, now what am I going to do with it? Well, you have to file, so you have to file some sort of return, whatever the state's, or we'll say tax authorities' schedule is. So in the US, it's going to vary depending on your sales amounts and the states that you're registered in. So each state does things a little differently. They have that leeway. So in Canada, if you're filing with the federal government, chances are you're probably going to file once per year if you're an Amazon seller. Because if you have less than 1.5 million Canadian dollars in sales, then you would only file once per year, which is pretty nice. Makes it pretty simple. And in the UK, chances are, depending on your sales, it's probably going to end up being quarterly, which isn't all that too complex. And the nice thing is you can figure it out. Now, just make sure to check their schedules, because I found their quarters don't match up with like January through March. They're off by like a month. So just check those. But more than anything, I just want to give a brief overview to the sales tax type situation in the US, Canada, and UK, and give you a little bit of the difference. So if you hear terms like sales tax, GST, also sometimes referred to as HST, it's not exactly the same thing, but for this purposes, we'll call it synonymous as federal sales tax in Canada. I also mentioned provincial sales tax, but we won't get too much into that. And VAT, which is their value-added tax in UK, and they also have something very similar to that in the rest of Europe. Now, if you start selling across the border, that could also have other VAT requirements, but here's the way I look at it. Sometimes people say, oh, well, I don't want to have to figure all this out. Well, why not? If you're making sales in the US, don't you want to make sales in the other countries? So it's at least worth looking into that. There's always services that will help you with whatever the filings there are. I use TaxJar in the US to help me with that. Canada I've found to be pretty straightforward. And in the UK, it's also not overly complex. I'm in a lot of countries. I'm registered in several different countries. You don't have to do that to start. But I'm registered in several countries, so I have an accounting firm as I record this. It's helping me with that. So by and large, if you have any questions with any of this, again, I'm not a tax professional, but I'll do my best to at least point you in the right direction. Feel free to leave me a comment down below. And if you are considering going into any of these international marketplaces and need a little bit of help, subscribe to this channel. And If you have questions, feel free to message me. I'm more than happy to consider doing videos and whatever your topic is. Or you can just do a search, within this channel to see what videos we have available that might answer some of your questions about selling internationally or just selling on Amazon in general. Now, if you're looking to go into Canada, at the time I recorded this, I just recently created this little checklist. It's called Expand into Canada. It's going to walk you through the steps that you need to do to get launched and up and running in Canada, walks you through some of those other steps, and gives you just some basic information just to get up and going, because I was there myself. I spent hours trying to research all this stuff, and so where I can help others, I want to do that. So again, if you've not subscribed to this channel, please consider subscribing, and also if you found this video to be helpful, if you could, give us a little thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching this video on this awesome topic of sales taxes, or whatever the sales tax situation is in these other countries. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Take care.